Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhamman sanghang namasami. Okay, so we'll finish up the Anattalakkhana Sutta. This morning we looked at the first half of the sutta, and this is not a terribly long sutta, even accounting for the fact that you do everything times five with the five aggregates. Still, it's not very long. Just 20 minutes chanting at a comfortable pace at most. But it very quickly checks all the boxes for important teachings in the Dhamma. Number one, just that it has the five aggregates. But there's also the fact that we don't control them. They are not self. They are not me, I, me, mine. We got the three characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and not self, all here in this sutta. But then in the third section, which again kind of matches the fourth noble truth, so us and the audience at this point are not yet fully enlightened. There's a recognition that even though you can point out, like, look, everything has this not self characteristic, still there isn't the flash of light and the understanding that signals, oh, there is no self. There is no center core to my being. It's all arising and ceasing viparinama dhammas, transient dhammas. There's if just that hearing that doesn't wake us up, then it might be that we need to apply ourselves. We need to arouse energy for dealing with the existing delusions that we have and giving rise to wisdom, the wisdom that sees things as they actually are. So this fourth noble truth is the way to the cessation of suffering. And in regards to the Anattalakkhana Sutta, we pick up where the Buddha says, so you should truly see any kind of form at all, past, present, or future, internal or external, solid or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all form with right understanding. This is not mine. I am not this. This is not myself. Any kind of feeling, any kind of perception, any kind of sankhara at all, and any kind of consciousness, you should see it. Past, future, present, internal, external, solid or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near. See all consciousness with right understanding. This is not mine. I am not this. This is not myself. So it's throwing a lot of different words at us, like go over them one by one. So look over here at the Pali, we have Atita Nagata Pachupana. Those who study Pali, isn't that delightful? Yeah. Past, future, and present all crammed into one peanut butter jelly sandwich of a word. And all of them are to be abandoned. Yeah. Ajata, internal, Bahita, external. Olarika is, we even coarse, gross, substantial, physical, or Sukuma, which is exquisite, refined. And then we have a very similar pair of words, Hina and Panita. Hina is actually used in the previous sutta, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, where the Buddha describes sensual indulgence as hina, which means coarse, worldly, basic, mundane. It's not a great word. It's not a word you use for something you like. It's when you're saying something that's kind of base or vulgar. Yeah. Or refined. Panita is a word that's used for luxurious foods like sugar and molasses and ghee and honey. These are panita bhojanani, fine, exquisite foods. Um, so, thus seeing all form. This is not mama. This is not me. Neso hamasmi. This is not for me. Na meso atati. This is not my atta. And then yatabutang samapanyaya databang. Databang is to see. Yatabutang is as it is. And samapanyaya is with right wisdom. Sama, like in the Eightfold Path, and panya. Yeah, so all of these Pali words, all one really meaty paragraph there. But it's all boiling down to what the Buddha is saying. If just hearing that all things that we experience, all things that we cognize, all things that we feel, all things that we remember, all of the things that we do, all of these things have this not self characteristic. They are not your atta or your soul or your center of being. If just hearing that doesn't wake us up, then we should apply ourselves to systematically, when we experience something, when we notice something, when we feel something, when we remember something, to remind ourselves, this is not myself. This is not me. This is not mine. It is not something that defines me. Because that's the work that needs to be done. You see, up until this point, we have assumed there is a self, there is a core of our being somewhere. That's the only thing we can say with certainty, is that we have misidentified that there is a self involved with the things that we experience in the world. And now we're being tasked with, if we want to be free, if we want this source of suffering that exists in the five aggregates to cease, we can't allow any corner for this idea of atta to hide in. So all of these different words are to say whether we're paying attention to something that we're experiencing in the moment, or we're remembering something, or we're anticipating something, whether this is something present within our sphere of influence, or whether it's something external to us, whether it is something simple and basic and mundane that we would otherwise overlook, or it is something refined and beautiful and exquisite that we would all agree that we really want. Um, all forms, all feelings, all perceptions, all sankharas, all incidences of consciousness are to be seen this way. And that is the trick. It's kind of similar to the ways that we apply any of the contemplations. Yeah. So say we have the contemplation of metta bhavana, of developing loving kindness. You don't really master it. I just say you can develop it by only focusing on the things that you already like. I'm going to focus on my best friends. I'm going to focus on cute, fuzzy animals. And I'm going to focus on people who've given me nice gifts. And I'm going to generate my metta in response to these beings. Yeah, that works. I'm not saying it doesn't work. But if you want to do actual bhavana, if you want to strengthen your loving kindness so that it is unshakable, imperturbable, and can pervade the entire world in all directions, well, then you're going to have to start to apply this very same methodology. Like I can't pick and choose who I have goodwill towards. I'm going to have goodwill towards them all. Yeah. And it is not just like that. It's like, I'm going to share it with all beings. It's that guy, not that guy. We'll leave him out, but everybody else will get my metta. We can't do it that way. We have to say, okay, I'm gonna start with the ones that are easy to have metta for. Then the ones that are neutral, I'm gonna start. Okay, yes, you and you helped me out in the grocery store. That's great. And you over there, you're just fixing that plumbing. Good for you. I have goodwill for you, even you. But then we're going to have to expand our sphere again, and even those people who are aggressively our enemies, who really don't like us, for sometimes for things we can't control, even then we eventually will develop goodwill until we get to the point where we experience goodwill that is boundaryless. And this is why these are called the boundaryless miniature. What do they call them? They have a word they use in the Mahayana. The somebody speak up.
The immeasurables.
Immeasurables. Thank you. Yes, this is why we call them immeasurable, because measuring is quantity. And it's like I have metta for this number of beings. And it's not until we break through that and we get there's no discernment, there's no differentiation. It's just our metta is for all beings. It's immeasurable, there's no boundaries. That's when we've really mastered it. And this is the same process that we're using here. Or like Asubha Bhavana, seeing the repulsiveness of something like anatomy, the body. We can go and look through and be like, it's yeah, it's all just matter, it's all just goo, it's all just guts, all of it. It's on my nails. My nails are pretty. No, they're not. Yeah, we can't differentiate and say, well, this is okay, but just everything else is gross. Eventually, we get to the point where it's like, oh, it's all just a bag of goo. Oh, okay. And that's where we get to an immeasurable state. And this is kind of the apex of that sort of application of mind. Yeah. Because as we do this particular, this practice, this application, it's almost guaranteed we're going to be doing it as us. I am contemplating anatta. I am contemplating not self. I am contemplating how this is not me. And it sounds hypocritical, right? It sounds like it's not going to work. It sounds like no matter how long we do this, there's always going to be an us deciding that that is not me, and that the us that's deciding that that's not me will never get challenged. But as it turns out, if we keep at it, everything will fall under this microscope. Everything will be seen at some point as not self. Even our sankharas, our very mental patterns, the very mental patterns that practice this practice of seeing things and seeing their characteristic of not self, even that will get scrutinized at some point and be seen as like, oh, that's not self too. And you're like, how could, but of course, it's a conditioned phenomenon. You're doing this practice because you read about it in a book and you want to be free of suffering. At first, it takes a lot of effort and we identify with it very strongly. But after a while of doing this practice, we start to feel that sense of the wheel of Dhamma is rolling. And it will continue to roll no matter what any Brahma or Deva or Mara says. That no king or ruler or dictator in the whole world can stop the wheel of Dhamma from turning. We start to feel that too. It's like, I'm not doing this because I'm going to get something. I'm not doing this because I'm driven by craving. I'm just doing this because this is the thing to be done. This is the only thing that makes any sense to do, because suffering is the thing and it's been chasing me my whole life and I want to get free of it. And at that point, there is no self even in our striving. And so at some point, even our very striving will be not self. It'll be something that we do because it makes sense, not because it's ourself, but because there's just no choice to get out of suffering. And lo and behold, having analyzed everything, having put everything under the microscope and seen its not self characteristic, there will now be nothing left. that we could ever identify with as self. At some point, there will be no refuge for this idea of atta, and it will pass away. It won't have any sustenance. It won't have any foundation. And now we get to the third noble truth, which is the cessation of suffering. And the cessation of suffering always comes based on the cessation of craving, which is the source of suffering. And here in the sutta, the Buddha says, seeing this, a learned noble disciple grows disillusioned with form, with feeling, with perception, with sankharas, and with consciousness. And being disillusioned, their desires fade away. When desire fades away, they're freed. When they are freed, they know, I am freed. They understand rebirth is ended. The spiritual journey has been completed. What had to be done has been done. There is no more returning to any state of existence. That's what the Buddha said, and satisfied the group of 5 monks approved of what the Buddha said. While this discourse was being spoken, the minds of the groups of 5 mendicants were freed from defilements through non-grasping. So this is the 4th and final, very brief section of this sutta, in which the Buddha describes this very process of how this idea of self ceases. And with it, ignorance ceases. And with the cessation of ignorance, desire, attachments, and identification, the foundation from which birth arises, also cease. And with that, we know it's all ceased. Suffering, the cause of suffering has ceased. There will be no more future births for me, because the cause that would have led to those coming about, the ignorance and desire that would have caused that, have ceased without remainder. There's nothing left to generate an existence, an idea of self. And it all focuses on this word, nibindati, which is nibbida. Yeah, we've talked about nibbida. I think we had a whole day long or something about nibbida. And nibbida is disenchantment, disillusionment, dispassion. It's this experience of desire falling away from what? Falling away from an object and falling out of the mind. Where does it fall? Again, we can't really say. It just ceases. Yeah. And it's not something we do as much as it's the product of our doing. So we do the seeing all things, past, future, present. We do that. But based on that, we start to realize, well, there's nowhere we can find this Anattalakkhana, this characteristic of self. There's nothing that has it. There is no self. There is no me anywhere in any of this. There is just stuff. There's stuff and there's feelings and there's perceptions. But as we start to see it's not really me, it's arising based on causes and conditions, then we lose our desire for it. We lose our attachment. We lose our identification. And it's that those were the things that held the idea of an atta in place. It can't exist without those things because there's nothing to reify it. There's nothing to make us believe in an atta. We had to do that for ourselves. We had to be so sure that we exist, that we imprint ourselves on things in the world. But if we stop doing that, there's nothing in the world that has this characteristic of self. So we're never going to get our sense of self renewed once we stop generating it. So we are guaranteed to attain release at that point, as did the 5 mendicants. So after all the lead up, our 5 mendicants, including Anyakandanya and Asaji and the other 3 whose names suddenly at the moment, they attained enlightenment. And for the rest of their lives, they were arahants, just wandering around. Asaji stayed with the Buddha. Anyakandanya did not. He kind of went his own way. And there's a record of him coming back to see the Buddha right at the end of his life. and bowing down at the feet of the Buddha, out of delight. So that's it's not that everything we have winks out of existence when we let go of this atta. We still live out the rest of our life. What has ceased is that mental process, which is going to insist on another life, on another life, on another life, on another life. That has gone out. All right. And at this point, we can, if there's any more questions or comments or anything we want to clear up, do that now.